Okie doke. So, Cimorene and Mendenbar have just borrowed a magic carpet from the giantess Balmor, and are headed off to try to go to see Kazul's grandkids to see if they know where she is. And then they're gonna, if she's not there, they'll keep searching. Here we go. Chapter 9, in which they discover the perils of borrowed equipment. It sounds like some of the predictions that people made might be coming true if there are perils to borrowed equipment. At first, the magic carpet ride was thoroughly enjoyable. The air was crisp and cool, and there was no noise at all except their own voices. The view was amazing, even better than looking down from a mountain. The mountains of the morning stood in crooked gray-blue rows below, each crack and boulder outlined in a sharp black shadow. Tiny figures moved across the rocks and mountains, sheep and mountain goats and adventurous knights. Every now and then, Mendenbar caught a glimpse of the lush trees of the enchanted forest between the peaks. "Stop craning your neck like that," Cimorene said. "You're confusing the carpet." "Sorry." Mendenbar sneaked a last look and sighed as the patch of green disappeared behind a rocky slope. How was Willin getting along without him? "Mendenbar, is your sword slipping?" Cimorene said. "I thought I felt something for a minute." "Is it coming out of the sheath?" "No," Mendenbar replied. "It's fine, and I haven't touched it. Are you sure it was the sword?" "No," Cimorene admitted. "Maybe we flew over something magical, and that's what I felt. It's gone now." "Good," said Mendenbar. "Are you—" The carpet gave a sudden lurch sideways, then dropped 3 feet. "Mendenbar!" Cimorene cried. "I told you to stop that!" "It wasn't me!" Mendenbar protested, trying to find something to hang on to. "Well, it wasn't me, and there's only the 2 of us up here," Cimorene shouted. The carpet rippled alarmingly, then resumed its peaceful progress. Cautiously, Mendenbar turned his head to look at Cimorene. Wisps of black hair had come loose from her braids to blow wildly across her face. It made her look particularly lovely, even though she was scowling at him. Mendenbar blinked and pulled his thoughts together. "I really didn't do anything," he said. "But—" The carpet wiggled and began to spin slowly. Mendenbar swallowed hard, wishing he had not eaten quite so much breakfast. He closed his eyes, then opened them again very quickly as the carpet bounced twice, paused, and then started spinning twice as fast in the opposite direction. "Carpet!" Mendenbar shouted. "Cut it out!" The lurching and spinning stopped. The carpet hung motionless in midair for a long moment. Then it dropped, like the bottom falling out of a cardboard box. Cimorene gasped, and then said something that sounded like "oof," as the carpet froze once more, 3 feet lower than it had been. Mendenbar started to push himself up, then without warning, the carpet dropped another 3 feet. What do you guys think is happening? This time, Mendenbar stayed flat on the teddy bears. 2 seconds later, the carpet dropped again, and again, and again. Mendenbar lost track of the bumps and concentrated on keeping track of his stomach. Suddenly, the carpet spun around twice and took off in a steep, fast climb. "Whoa!" Cimorene cried. "Whoa, you stupid carpet! Cut it out!" Again, the carpet froze. Then it dropped again. But this time, instead of bumping, it fell like a stone. Mendenbar got a glimpse of the ground, drawing quickly closer. And then he had both hands on the hilt of his sword. He didn't bother to pull it out of his sheath. He just yanked at the power it held and flung it around himself and Cimorene, then shoved with all of his might. Their speed slowed abruptly. The carpet fell away beneath them, rippling angrily, and plopped down on a rocky depression at the foot of a mountain. Mendenbar and Cimorene drifted after it, landing softly in the carpet's center. They lay there for a moment, catching their breath and collecting their wits. Finally, Mendenbar raised his head and looked warily around. They lay in the middle of a circle of pine trees. "I think we've arrived," he said, sitting up. "Good," Cimorene said shakily. She sat up, pushing tendrils of hair out of her face, and gave him a crooked smile. "I guess I should have asked Ballamore a few more questions about the carpet before we took it." "Yes, well, it's too late now." Mendenbar rolled off the carpet and stood up. "How far have we come?" "A little over halfway, I think. Too far to walk back, not far enough to walk the rest of the way there." She made a face at the teddy bears, which looked innocently back. "We may have to try the carpet again." "We don't have to try it right away, though," Mendenbar pointed out. "There's a house over there. You can see the roof through the trees. Maybe the owner can tell us exactly where we are and the shortest way to get where we're going." "All right," Cimorene agreed, with a swiftness that made Mendenbar think that she was no more eager to get back on the carpet than he was. "We'll have to bring the carpet with us, though. If you leave magical things lying around, all sorts of dreadful things can happen." Mendenbar had to admit that she was right, though he wasn't happy about it. They set Ballamore's lunch in the middle of the carpet, then rolled the rug around it, folded the fringe carefully to the inside, and then Cimorene took Cimorene took the front end and Mendenbar picked up the rear. They started toward the house. Weaving through 3 rows of pine trees, they ducked under the low-hanging branches along the outer edge of the grove and emerged in front of the house. It looked, thought Mendenbar, as if it had been put together by the same person who built his palace, except that instead of too many towers and staircases, the house had too many windows. Square windows, round windows, wide windows, tall windows, skinny windows, diamond windows, tiny windows filled with milky glass, enormous picture windows, windows with stained glass pictures of ladies in sweeping robes and birds with gold feathers, open windows with curtains billowing out of them. The roof was made of red tile and skylights, and the chimney had a square block of clear glass in the front side. Even the door had a window in it, right in the middle, at about waist height. With only 2 floors, there were hardly enough walls to hold all the windows. In spite of the way the building sprawled in all directions. As they drew near, Mendenbar felt a faint aura of power around the house, hanging in the air like mist. He was about to mention it to Cimorene when he heard yells and shouts of laughter coming from behind the house. Suddenly, a small blonde girl dashed around the corner and stopped short, staring. A slightly larger boy followed in hot pursuit and barely managed to stop in time to avoid collision. The blonde child looked at him reproachfully, then turned toward the house and shrieked at the top of her voice, "Herman! Herman! There's people!" Bah! A deep, cross voice came carrying through the open window beside the door. "I don't want any people. Tell them to go away." The little girl obediently turned to Cimorene and said, "Go away, please," and stuck her thumb in her mouth. "No, thank you," Cimorene responded. "We want to talk to your parents." "Haven't got any," said the boy. He tilted his head to one side as if considering, and then took off for the house at a dead run. "Herman, they won't go," he shouted as he ran. "They want parents. His shouting stopped as he dove head first through the open window and vanished inside. One of the upstairs windows scraped open, and 2 older children poked their heads out. At the same time, 3 small heads appeared at the corner of the house, gazing timidly at Mendenbar and Cimorene. Cimorene looked at Mendenbar and set her end of the carpet on the ground. Mendenbar put his end down too and stepped forward to stand beside her. The children stared at them without speaking. "Absolutely not!" the cross voice shouted. The front door of the house flew open, and a dwarf stomped out. He was not much taller than the oldest of the children, but his long black beard and muscular arms showed plainly that he was no child. His hair looked like an upside-down black haystack. He glared angrily at Mendenbar. "I won't do it!" the dwarf declared before either Mendenbar or Cimorene could say anything. I don't care if it's the family tradition. I don't care if you need the money. I don't care if her mother lied and now you have to convince your council. I don't care if the mother's going to turn her into a toad tomorrow if she doesn't perform. I will not do it, and that's final. So, drawing on our knowledge of fairy tales, because we know that a number of fairy tale characters have been referenced in these books, who do you think would not want to do something, would be a dwarf, and would have a lot of children hanging around? I'll give you a hint. This person has a complicated name and usually trades turning straw into gold for newborn babies, for your first child. He's coming out and he's like, nope, I won't do it. I got 50 children already. I'm not going to turn anything into gold. So they're all quite confused because he's coming out shouting, saying he's not going to do stuff, and they don't even know who he is. They just found him accidentally. That's quite all right, Cimorene said. We don't want you to. We just want... I know what you want, the dwarf said, hopping furiously from one foot to the other. You want a chance to talk me into it. Well, you won't get one, missy. You should be ashamed to even consider such a thing. She isn't considering it, Mendenbar said. We're travelers, and we just stopped to get directions. The dwarf paused in mid-hop, balancing on one foot. He peered suspiciously at Mendenbar. One of the children giggled. The dwarf glared in their direction, and then turned back to Mendenbar. Directions? What sort of directions? He asked, with evident mistrust. Who are you, anyway? I am Princess Cimorene, and this is King Mendenbar, Cimorene said, and we're trying to get to the cave where the dragon Falgorn lives. Ah, you're after a dramatic rescue, the dwarf said with relief. I suppose that's all right. But are you sure you know what you're getting into? Dragons are tough. No, Cimorene said with an exasperated tone, as if she was tired of correcting the same mistake over and over again. I am chief cook and librarian for Kazul, the king of the dragons, and I am very happy with my job. I don't want anyone to rescue me. The dwarf's eyes narrowed. Then why are you looking at this other dragon? Because I have an urgent message for Kazul, and she's gone to visit Falgorn, Mendenbar explained. Huh. The dwarf hesitated, looking from Cimorene to Mendenbar. How do I know this isn't some sort of trick? Why should we want to trick you? Cimorene asked. To get me to spin straw into gold for you, you silly girl, the dwarf said. That's why everyone comes to me. And look what I get. Children! Hundreds and hundreds of children! Bah! The littlest children giggled and pulled their heads back behind the corner as the dwarf spun around. The blonde girl stared solemnly at him for a moment, and then took her thumb out of her mouth, ran forward, and gave the dwarf an enormous hug. Thank you, Herman, she told the dumbfounded dwarf. She hugged him and skipped off, apparently tired of listening. The dwarf smiled foolishly after her. The expression made him look pleasant and almost handsome. After a moment, the dwarf turned back to Cimorene, and his frown returned. I don't see the connection between children and spinning straw into gold, Mendenbar said before the dwarf could start explaining again. Would you be good enough to explain that to me? Explain? The dwarf fumed. Why, that's what the last girl said, and this is what happened. Twins! That's what happened. And she claimed she couldn't remember which one was first, so I ended up with both of them. I can see why that would be annoying, Cimorene said noncommittally. The dwarf glared at her. Yeah, you say that now, but what's the use? You'll get it out of me one way or another. I mean, if you'd rather not tell us, Mendenbar started, but the dwarf cut him off with a despairing wave. It doesn't matter, it's my fate, that's what it is. I should have never agreed to learn how to spin straw into gold in the first place. Why did you? Mendenbar asked. It's a family tradition, the dwarf answered gloomily. Of course, it doesn't work if you're just spinning for yourself. So, a long time ago, my great-grandfather used to offer his talent to help out a girl who was in a sticky situation. If he hadn't been such a do-gooder, I wouldn't be in this mess. What did he do exactly? Mendenbar asked. Well, the local prince had gotten the notion that the girl could spin straw into gold, the dwarf said. Brainless young idiot, but they're like that. If she could spin straw into gold, why was she living in a hovel? Anyway, Gramps told her he would do the spinning in return for part of the gold and her firstborn child. She agreed, but naturally when the baby was born, she didn't want to give him up. So Gramps agreed to a guessing game. If she could guess his name, she could keep the baby. Then he let her find out what his name was. So she kept the baby, Gramps kept the gold, and everyone went home happy. I think I'm beginning to get the idea, Cimorene said. It's not just spinning straw into gold that's a family tradition, is it? It's the whole situation. The dwarf nodded sadly. Right, the first time. Only I can never make it work properly. I can find plenty of girls who are supposed to spin straw into gold, and most of them suggest the guessing game, but I've never had one who could guess my name. Oh dear, said Cimorene. I even changed my name legally so it would be easier, the dwarf said sadly. Hermit isn't even difficult to remember, but no, the silly ladies can't do it. So I end up with a baby as well as the gold, and babies eat and cry and need clothes, and the gold runs out, and I have to find another girl to spin gold for, and it happens all over again, and I end up with another baby. It's not fair. You seem fond of the children, though, Mendenbar said. The dwarf looked around to see whether any of the children were within hearing distance, then nodded. They're good kids. It's just there are too many of them. I moved out here so it would be harder for the silly girls to find me and talk me into spinning for them. But they keep finding me anyway. It was a rather drastic move, wasn't it? Cimorene said. What about the dragons and giants and rock snakes? Oh, they're no problem. This house used to belong to a magician, and he left a lot of guarding spells, so nothing can get anywhere near here. That's why it felt magical, Mendenbar said. It's an odd sort of house for a wizard, said Cimorene. Why so many windows? Not a wizard, the dwarf said. A magician. He was trying to find out which kinds of windows work best when they're enchanted. Did he find out? I suppose so, or he wouldn't have let me buy it. Most of the windows don't work, but there's a round one at the end of the attic that still shows things once in a while. What do you think might happen if they now can access a window that shows things? What might someone want to do with a window that shows you things? Bryn. What? Did you say something about Kazul?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Your audio's going funky today. I'm sorry, Bryn. Leo, what do you think?
I think that maybe since it's kind of like a spying thing, maybe they can try and find Kazul from there.
Yeah, they might try to find Kazul. Let's see what happens. We're almost at the end of this chapter, and this one ends with a cliffhanger, which I know you all love. What kind of things? Mendenbar asked. Can you ask to see something in particular, or does it just show scenes at random? You have to ask, said the dwarf, and you don't always get an answer. Would you like to see it? Yes, please, said Cimorene quickly. Mendenbar looked doubtfully at the carpet, wondering whether it would be safe to leave where it was, with all the children around, and thinking how much trouble it would be to haul along if they didn't. Let it be, the dwarf said, following Mendenbar's gaze. The kids won't touch it. With some reluctance, Mendenbar nodded and followed the dwarf and Cimorene into the house. The inside was as maze-like as Mendenbar had expected from the rambling exterior. The dwarf led them down a passage, around a corner, up a flight of creaky stairs, through a room lined with pictures, up another flight of stairs, down a long hall, to a cramped, stuffy little room under the farthest slope of the roof. The only light came from a circular window about twice the size of Mendenbar's head. "There it is," said the dwarf. "If you want to see something, ask, but I can't guarantee it'll work." "Show me Kazul, King of the Dragons," Cimorene commanded at once. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Mendenbar felt a tentative swell of magic around the window. "I think it needs a boost," he said, and reached for his sword. "No, let me," said Cimorene. She thought for a minute, then raised her right hand and pointed at the window. "Power of water, wind, and earth, cast the spell to show its birth, raise the fire to stop the harm, by the power of this charm." Power surged around the window, and the glass went milk-white. "What did you do?" Mendenbar said, impressed. "It's a dragon spell," Cimorene told him, keeping her eyes fixed on the window. "It's easy to remember, and it's not hard to adapt to just about anything. I found it in Kazul's—" "Look!" The window glass had cleared. Through the circular pane, Mendenbar could see the inside of a large cave. A sphere of golden light, like a giant glowing soap bubble, covered half the cave, and inside was a dragon. She was easily 4 times as tall as Mendenbar, even without counting her wings. 3 short, stubby horns stuck out of her head, 1 on each side and 1 in the center of her forehead. And her scales were starting to turn gray around the edges. An angry-looking trickle of smoke leaked out of her mouth as she breathed. In front of the bubble stood 2 tall, bearded men in long robes, carrying staffs of polished wood. "Wizards," said Cimorene angrily. "I knew it." And that is the end of the chapter.